Motivated by love. Though we have an obligation to be generous, our primary motivation for giving should be our love for God and for one another. Here's Gene to explain.
In 2 Corinthians 8:9, Paul addresses that issue. Now notice, I'm not saying this as a command. The fact of the matter is, when Paul wrote Romans 12:1 and 2, he said, I beseech you, I ask you, I urge you, beg you, in view of God's mercies, that you present your body to the Lord a living sacrifice. Even the presentation of ourselves to God, Paul didn't command it, he asked us. And what is the basis of that? God's mercy, what God has done for us. And so, since what we have materially is a part of who we are, he applies the same consistent principle. He said, look, Corinthians, I'm not saying this as a command. Rather, by means of the diligence of others, I am testing the genuineness of your love. Love should be your motivation. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus, that should be our motivation. Although he was rich, our great example, for your sake he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. Now, it's interesting that when Paul wrote Romans, and we've already covered this, in chapter 15, he is explaining to them that he wanted to come to them. And he said this, and this also refers to this goal that Paul had on this third missionary journey. He says, now, however, I'm traveling to Jerusalem. I want to come to Rome, but I'm now traveling to Jerusalem to serve the saints. How is he going to serve the saints? For Macedonia and Achaia, which includes Corinth. In other words, the Corinthians came through. They responded. And so this is written after what he's dealing with here in 2 Corinthians. For Macedonia, that is these believers who gave out of poverty, and Achaia, that is the churches in Achaia, Corinthians being one of them, were pleased to make a contribution to the poor among the saints in Jerusalem. Yes, they were pleased. But notice, they are indebted to them. That sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Well, read on. For the Gentiles have shared in their spiritual benefits, which we have. And as Roman Christians, as Corinthian Christians, as the Thessalonian Christians, the Philippian Christians, they came to Christ because Jews came. Paul was a Jew himself. Barnabas was a Jew. Silas was a Jew. Believing Jews. In other words, these people, these Gentiles, came to Christ because these Jewish evangelists and apostles were faithful. Because the Gentiles have shared in their spiritual benefits, that is, the spiritual benefits that came to the Jews, then they are obligated to minister to Jews in material needs. Now, again, it sounds paradoxical and contradictory. But the fact of the matter is, the two can go together in many aspects of life, not just in our generosity. And so the question I raise here is, how does an understanding of God's grace enable us to give freely and cheerfully, even though we have an obligation? Well, think about other relationships. Think about marriage. We have an obligation to care for each other, husband and wife. We have an obligation to meet each other's needs, to care for each other. But do you like someone to meet your needs because they feel obligated? Or do you want your needs met, whatever those needs might be, because they care and they love and they appreciate you? Now, the two go together. They're not paradoxical. And the same thing is true of giving our bodies to Christ. God is, in that sense, like we are, using that advisedly, in the fact that He wants us to respond to Him out of love, not out of duty. He wants us to give out of love, not out of duty, although we have a duty. And that relates to every aspect of life. And when we really understand God's grace and what He's done for us, it enables us then to respond freely to Him, whether it's our body, whether it's our resources, even though we have an obligation. We don't think in terms of obligation. We know we have, but we won't think in that terms. We think in terms of the opportunity and the privilege. And so God is speaking here through Paul, I think, a very, very important principle. Motivated by love, motivated by grace.